Good evening, everyone, and welcome. What a beautiful day today was, and reminds me of the other 300 days that are not so great, I think, in Michigan. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm absolutely thrilled with our two speakers this evening. Both have an in-depth knowledge and experience on youth mental health and mental health awareness. Dr. Emily Bilek of the University of Michigan Depression Center, and Nagham Alsamari, an international speaker, and her focus is going to be on resiliency. For those that don't know me, my name is Collier Smith. I'll be your host this evening, and I am a member of both Toastmasters and Rotary. Both Toastmasters and Rotary have collaborated to put this event on this wonderful webinar, so I thank them both. For those that are not familiar with Toastmasters, Toastmasters is a nonprofit organization committed to improve the communication and leadership skills of all our members. Doesn't matter what level you're at, our common goal is to continually get better and better at our communication and leadership skills. For those that are not familiar with Rotary, Rotary is the largest service organization in the world. 1.4 million members, 36,000 clubs in 200 countries. Rotarians are highly engaged in the communities that they live and work in. And a perfect example is the hard work that we've done in youth mental health. About 5 years ago, we were sitting at a round table with various community leaders, and we're trying to come up with a way and brainstorming on how we can increase the mental health awareness and drive down the stigma. And I'll never forget the CEO of the Ann Arbor Marathon got up and stated, the Ann Arbor Marathon, I'm going to commit, is going to be solely dedicated to mental health. Well, this was great news. Whether you run a marathon or a half marathon, or if you walk the beautiful Arboretum in Ann Arbor, which my wife and I did, or you volunteer, it doesn't make a difference. Over the years, the past 5 years, we have collectively increased the mental health awareness and driven down the stigma. In addition to the race, the day before we had a symposium, and we have booths so that mental health organizations can share the work that they're doing in the community as well as the public schools. And we also have mental health speakers. In addition to all that, any one of us, whether we run the marathon or walk through the Arboretum or volunteer, we all can raise money to our favorite mental health cause, either through the Ann Arbor Marathon or our personal Facebook page. 5 years ago, I volunteered to pass out t-shirts and the bibs with the computer chips. And I will never forget this experience. A mom came up to me and she said, I am so glad you're doing this. And I'm thinking to myself, this is great. We're resonating in the community. This is absolutely wonderful. It was a little bit later I realized the impact we were making in the community. This mom came up and she said, I'm so glad you're doing this. You see, 2 months ago, my husband and I lost our 15-year-old son who took his life. And we are so grateful that you are doing this and raising the level of mental health, because that's exactly what we want to do. And 5 years ago, they had a booth at the symposium. They shared their personal story and the initial workings with the public schools. And you can only imagine year after year after year, in 5 years, their nonprofit, which they named after their son, got larger and larger and larger. And the work that they did in the public schools, the impact became bigger and bigger and bigger. Isn't it inspiring that all the negative things that you hear on social media or on the news, that a god-awful tragedy with this mom and dad, they were able to turn that upside down and provide positive experiences so many of us on suicide awareness and prevention. No one will ever tell me that one person can't make a difference or make an impact, because absolutely they can. If you have questions on Toastmasters or Rotary, or just want to learn more how we make an impact or how you would like to make an impact, it's very simple. All you'll have to do is email me at collierasmith@gmail.com with your questions. You notice there's a Y in Collier. That's thanks to my parents, and an A for my middle initial, collierasmith@gmail.com. And I will personally follow up with you. As I mentioned, I'm very excited with our two speakers. We are open to questions. Throughout the presentation, you'll see comments that you can put your questions. And I would like to start with Dr. Emily Bilek first. And just a little background on Dr. Emily Bilek. She is a board-certified clinical psychologist and clinical associate professor at the Department of Psychiatry, Michigan Medicine, and University of Michigan. She is passionate about improving access to effective treatments for youth anxiety, obsessive compulsive, and related disorders. Please welcome Dr. Emily Bilek.
Thank you so much, Collier. I'm delighted to be here. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And I grew up hearing about the wonderful work that Rotary does. My grandfather was a very proud member of the Ann Arbor Rotary. And so yeah, it's a beautiful day. I always think of my grandfather on beautiful days. And it's with pride that I get to present today for you all. So yes, my work is primarily on youth mental health. I work most with youth with anxiety or OCD, but also with a lot of youth with depression or other related concerns. We're going to take a broader view today and talk about youth mental health in general. Here is our brief agenda for the evening. We're going to talk about recent trends in mental health, some hypothesized causes of what's been going on, and some potential solutions and what you as people who care for young people can do. So unfortunately, the trends, my spoiler alert is that the trends don't look good, and I don't think that will spoil it for too many of you. I imagine that you're aware. In 2021, the Surgeon General released an advisory on youth mental health in response to the concerning trends that had been emerging prior to and during the pandemic. So for instance, let's talk about anxiety. I know, and I apologize, I'm sure these graphs are very small on your screens. On the left, we have youth anxiety for girls over time, different ages for different lines, and the right is for boys. So you can see that they've all increased over time. We've got about 2018 here on the right and 2004 on the left. But what I want to bring your attention to the most is that there's a real inflection point or dramatic increase in rates of anxiety disorders, especially for girls between approximately 2012 and 2016. Similarly, youth depression has been increasing for the past 15 or so years. Here on this graph, we see depression over time with 2005 on the left, 2020 on the right, and we've got teen girls in red, teen boys in blue, and all teens together in green. Similar trend in that they're all going up. And in particular, we're seeing this inflection or a really strong, steep increase in these years, maybe starting around 2012. Self-harm has increased over time, this time really just for girls, I would say. And again, an inflection point around the same time period. Suicide rates have fluctuated up and down, and unfortunately for boys in particular, those have gone up in the same time period. So overall, we see a trend of worsening mental health for youth, maybe starting somewhere in that 2010-2012 timeframe, with sharp inflections happening from 2012 to 2015. And for nearly all indicators, we see that this is worse for girls than for boys. So what could possibly explain these trends? There was a recent paper that reviewed studies from 1991 through 2020 that looked at trends in youth mental health. All 10 of these studies, they found 10 studies, all 10 of them found worsening rates of mental illness among these, this sort of youth adolescence age range. And across the articles, they each speculated or provided some indication of what they thought may be explanations for the trends in mental health. So this doesn't mean that the studies necessarily examined them, but they hypothesized. So you can see along the bottom here some of the different different types of causes that were hypothesized. 6 of the 10 studies said that social media might play a role. You can see that 4 suggested that just increases in screening and diagnosis may have been responsible for some of that increase. If we are screening for it more, we're going to catch more of what was already there, but that will make it look like the rates are getting higher. And then there's all sorts of other things that could be attributed to this. So the economy, the pandemic, changes in parental supervision or youth autonomy over time, youth stress, etc. So we could explore each of these factors, but we'd be here all evening. And so instead, I just chose 2 for us to talk about today. We'll start by talking about the hypothesized role of social media in youth mental health. And then we'll talk about parental monitoring or lack of youth independence. So let's take a look at screen time and social media. Here is just a brief overview of a sort of a timeline of when different social media platforms were released or first started. So you can see far on the left, Facebook started in 2004, TikTok in 2017, a few other ones that you may be familiar with in the middle, and I'm sure there's 100 others, ones that teens are using today that I'm not even familiar with. Looking at it another way, we can examine how many users each platform had over time. So here on the left is 2004, it goes through 2018. Different colored lines are different platforms. We have Facebook in purple. Let's see if I can find TikTok. Oh, it just started at the end here. So it's just got these 2 little points. Again, you don't need to see each individual line here. The point is that there's a similar inflection during the same time period. People really started to get on social media in those same years we talked about before, that 2010 to 2015 timeframe. We also know that youth are spending a lot of time on social media. So a recent survey of over 1,500 teens that were in the age range of about 13 to 19, the survey found that more than 3/4 of youth spend 2 or more hours a day on social media. So that's this green bar over here. How many youth are spending more than 2 or more hours on social media a day? So we got 76%, 77% spending 2 or more hours a day on social media. Only 4.6 are spending 2 or more hours a day on chores, which I'm sure they're all very grateful for, that they're not falling into that camp. And you can just see all sorts of, other types of activities, what people are spending their time. So 2 or more hours a day, they could be doing something else with their time, sure, but that doesn't seem too bad in my mind. What was more alarming to me was that 30% of teens in the same poll reported spending 6 or more hours a day on social media. And maybe that doesn't shock you either. Maybe you have a teenager. Maybe you yourself spend a lot of time on social media. I guess the question is, if they're spending this much time on social media, what does that mean? Why do we care? So there are many potential risks or dangers for youth on social media. They may encounter harmful content, things like content that promotes eating disorders. That's especially prevalent on social media and can be really challenging for platforms to get rid of and to hide, and has been shown to be linked, people getting access to that and being shown eating disorder content has been linked to negative mental health outcomes. Similarly, there can be lots of pro-substance use content online, which has been shown to be associated with negative outcomes, self-harm content, suicidal behavior. All of these things are harmful content that teens or even younger kids may be accessing. Other risks. Teens can be contacted by people that they don't know that might be dangerous. So in one study, they found that more than 50% of girls reported being contacted by strangers on Instagram or Snapchat in ways that made them uncomfortable. Location sharing functions are prevalent on most social media platforms, and they can be fun or they can be interesting. I laugh because my sisters, I'm so grateful, I'm so lucky, my sisters both live in town right now, and they have my location at all times. So sometimes they'll text me and say, oh, I think you're at the grocery store. Can you pick me up this? And I think you know too much. So maybe I'm an old fart. I'm not a huge fan of the location sharing functions on social media, but there's bigger risks than just being, asked to do chores, right? So we know that kids can feel excluded. They can see their friends hanging out without them, and that can be really challenging. And even worse, we know that there are risks to personal safety of being, found by someone that you don't know or someone is aware of your location. Additionally, there's things like online harassment or cyberbullying, which is very prevalent and can be very dangerous to teens. Black teenagers in particular, there was a research study that found that they experience racial discrimination online multiple times per day on average. So this isn't just a rare occurrence. Cyberbullying, it's very prevalent and very damaging. But even if they are only encountering positive content, we know how much time they're spending on social media and smartphones in general. And if they're doing that, it tends to mean they're not doing something else. So they're probably engaging in less physical activity, less in-person social contact, and less sleep. One study found that 40% of teens report that TikTok gets in the way with sleep. TikTok and other social media platforms gets in the way with sleep at least weekly. And a full quarter of teens surveyed in that study said that it gets in the way daily. And again, maybe that doesn't surprise you. From all the teens that I work with clinically, it does not surprise me, but it is really troubling because sleep is not only just important for everyday functioning, but it is also a risk factor for so many of the mental health concerns that we're talking about. That said, we can't throw all of social media out. There are some real significant advantages that we have to keep in mind. So teens get access to things like friendship. Some research suggests that teens feel more accepted and like they're more connected to what's going on in their friends' lives through social media. It also helps teens feel like they have people who can support them through tough times. It's ready access to supportive people. They have a place to show their creative side. You can find any type of community online. So if I'm really into crocheting animals, like little stuffed animals, I would not have to look hard to find a whole community online, even if in my high school, my rural high school, there's no one else who does that. This is doubly important for teens of marginalized backgrounds where they may not be accepted in their local community. They may feel really isolated. They may feel and may actually be, treated poorly, bullied for whatever their identity is or aspects of their experience. And they can find supportive people online. So we know that there are pros, there are benefits to social media. We know that there are risks. There's a question about what do we do with this information? Is there actually a risk of social media to youth mental health? So we can start to get some clues when we look at research that compares the amount of time people spend on screens, teens spend on screens, and depression scores. So that's what this graph is showing you. You can see that green is girls, red is boys, and the bottom axis here is saying how much time teens spent on their screens. So there's actually not in this study a very strong impact for boys spending more time online. It's a little, their depression scores are a little worse when they get to the 3 or above mark, 3 hours or above mark per day. But overall, it's much flatter than what we see for the girls, whereas depression scores are extremely high, or at least higher at that 3+ hour point. So we could look at this graph and say, okay, this means that social media use causes worse mental health outcomes, especially for girls. And we also have some data that says that people who use social media are almost 3 times as likely to be depressed as those who use it least. Again, so maybe social media is driving people to have worse mental health. But here we have to take a moment to consider the types of studies that have been done for youth mental health in association with social media. It can be really difficult to create experimental studies of social media mental health. There have been some, but they're not as realistic. So most of the studies that we're talking about are correlational, which just means that they're looking at the rates of 2 different things at the same time. Does variable X seem to be high when variable Y is high? And that's what we saw in that last slide, that for girls, when use of screen time is high, depression scores were higher. But we need to be careful not to assume that correlation means causation. So that's what this little comic is talking about. And we can also look at this satirical paper that was actually published in 2001. And it found that countries who have more storks in them also have higher birth rates. And the conclusion, as you can see in the title, is that storks deliver babies. You didn't know it, but it's true. So I think we probably can agree that, I don't think I'm spoiling anything for anyone here when I say that storks do not deliver babies. So what could be going on here in this situation? In this case, the case is that there's actually larger countries are more likely to have more storks in them and more likely to have more babies born in them, right? Smaller countries are going to have less room for storks and babies. So in this case, it's just a classic third variable problem. We're not accounting for the thing that's really driving both of those rates to be higher. We need to think about that when we're talking about all of the stuff we'll talk about today. But first, right now, social media use and mental health. It could be the case that using social media causes mental health to get worse. But maybe it goes the other way. Maybe youth who are depressed or anxious are more likely to spend time on social media and use it in ways that tend to lead to having worse mood. So one study to this end found that adolescents with mental health conditions, depression, anxiety, any diagnosed mental health conditions, they reported spending more time on social media and being less satisfied with their online social life. The few longitudinal studies there have been, one found that for adolescent girls, social media use at time 1 did not predict depression at time 2, but the opposite was true, that depression at time 1 predicted social media use at time 2. So we don't know for sure, but there could be something suggesting that maybe depression or low mood leads to more unhelpful social media use. And you can see how that's true. If I'm feeling depressed, I don't feel like doing anything. I'm more likely to sit at home. What am I going to do if I'm sitting at home? I might get on my phone and ruminate. I might sit there and look at my friends all having fun. So we don't know necessarily if that's the only direction that it's going. There could also be third variables that influence both depression and unhelpful social media use. So you could imagine teens who are excluded socially may be more likely to be depressed and maybe more likely to use social media in unhelpful ways. All of these things would need to be, further investigated to conclusively say what is causing what. But it is pretty clear that there is an association, and especially for certain youth. Additionally, not all social media is created equal. It doesn't all have the same effect. This extremely tiny graph shows that a lot of different types of social media behaviors or social media apps. And across the bottom here, what we're looking at is how negatively impactful these different social media behaviors were on mental health, well-being. So if you're getting closer to 0, it either has no impact or very slightly negative, in the studies. And towards the top, you can see the ones that were most likely to have a more negative impact. These were things like having secret accounts that your parents don't know about or that you're trying to hide from other people in your life, experiencing cyberbullying, and using social media in an addictive way. All those were associated with worse well-being. Whereas at the bottom, we see things like playing video games, socially, online, using messaging apps to communicate with people that you already know. Those had less of a negative impact on mental health outcomes. And in some other studies, those type of behaviors have actually been shown to be associated with positive well-being. So we can't say that, again, all social media use is bad. All right, to sum it up, we know that there are potential benefits and risks associated with the use of social media. It may really depend on the individual, what benefits they experience versus what, downsides they experience. In general, if we look across the board, more use seems to be associated with worse mental health, but we don't know what the direction of that relationship is. We don't know if there are third variables also contributing to that. And there are individual differences in the relationship between social media and mental health, as well as the types of social media use. And we just know that there are certain types of behaviors that are likely to be more problematic, more harmful, and it may especially impact those kids who are already at risk or experiencing mental health problems. Okay, so that was our initial summary of social media. We're going to move now to talk about overprotective parenting. So recently there was a Pew Research poll that asked caregivers about their parenting style. So 20% of caregivers said that they give too much freedom. 34% said it's not too much, not too little, but almost half, 45%, said that they tend to be overprotective. This is the parenting phenomenon that we're going to explore. And certainly not all parents are overprotective, but I would guess that more parents are overprotective than admit that they're overprotective or know that they're overprotective. So possibly 45% is a bit of an underestimate. And we're going to look at how that might be influencing childhood and how it may relate to the well-being trends that we're seeing. But first, I want you to take a moment to think about your own childhood. If you can, I want you to conjure up 1 or 2 favorite memories that you have from that time. Maybe if you can, like sometime when you were 13 or younger. Try and think about where you were, what you were doing, whether any adults were present. And whatever your memory was, ask yourself whether you think children would be allowed to do that same thing today. When I ask this question a lot, especially in front of live audiences where I can get live feedback, people often will tell me about memories about playing outside with other children in the woods or riding bikes, often activities where no other adults are around. And it's not to say that kids wouldn't be allowed to do any of those things today, but I do think that some of those things are less common now. For me, I often think back to times when I was maybe like 7 to 9 and would go to summer camp, and they had lots of structured activities, which were fun, but I would always treasure like the free time, and my friends and I would go into the woods and make pretend cars that we were trying to drive up and down these trails that we had, admittedly, like very risky steep trails that we had created. And it's just a favorite memory of mine. This is a picture of my son who is enjoying the same kind of pastime, playing in the creek, trying to climb on all the rocks. I really have internalized this message that it's important for children to have this independent time, to be able to explore and to grow independently. Just kidding. Here I am, maybe 15 feet away, fretting about whether he's going to fall into the river and be swept away, or whether we were on a road trip, whether he was just going to get real wet and be cranky for the rest of the day. So this is all just to say that parenting expectations have really changed for a lot of people in the past 40 years or so. Parents are expected to provide near constant supervision to protect children from even minor negative outcomes like bumps and bruises, broken bones. So what has changed? Structurally, there are things that are different, just as society as a whole, right? Obviously, there will be communities and cultural and even just geographical differences in this. But as a whole, mothers are more likely to be employed full-time than they were 40 or more years ago. The number of single parent households has increased. Families are having fewer and fewer children than they did before. And this maybe has caused or has coincided with cultural shifts that include expectations that parents spend more time with children than they did before. So as a result, children have less autonomy, less independence, and responsibility. I want to pause for a second and just mention that it's not as if overparenting is someone's fault or any individual's fault or my fault as a parent for overparenting or overprotecting my children. Over the last few decades, our society sort of created an arms race of intensive parenting, where they just started rewarding more hands-on, more involved, more available parents. Those were deemed good parents, right? The pressures there also increased potentially in tandem with or partially in response to a lot of stranger danger scare in the 90s, where there started to be this fear of kidnapping, and there was widely publicized kidnappings in the news, which turned out to be extremely rare, but they felt like such an outsized risk given how much it was publicized. When you feel like your child could be kidnapped in your local community, you stop seeing the other adults in your community as people who can help care for your child and start to see them as the potential threat, right? And so parents have to be on, paying attention, look, like always have eyes on their children at the playground, because not only might they fall and hurt themselves, but someone else might snatch them away. And then this coincides with sort of that sense of like, oh, you're a good parent if you're paying attention and not looking at your phone. So independence, we can talk about as being important for kids, and I'll talk about why that might be important in a little bit, but they probably have fewer naturally arising opportunities for it. In one study that looked at this, it was a study called, "Well, you feel more responsible when you're unsupervised," which was a quote from someone, like a child in the study who was about 10. One participant in the study said, "I do feel some societal pressure at times to hover a little bit. There's a certain level of expectation in the media that as a parent, you're going to do everything you can to make sure your child is healthy and successful." And on the surface, there's nothing wrong with that statement. Of course, we want our children to be healthy and successful. And I think this doing everything you can piece is where we sometimes get ourselves into trouble. In this picture, I was trying to look for a picture of what does parenting look like today. This picture does not necessarily demonstrate me being an overprotective parent so much as me urging and just pleading with my child to cooperate with me, which is what parenting looks like most days for me. But going back to independence, why is it important? I think that's where I was going with this. So children love to run, they love to play fight, they love to climb trees, jump on rocks, climb in a river, just like we were looking at. This kind of independent play is fun, but why might it be important? My guess is that you all have intuitive ideas of why. Independence teaches things like problem solving. If I run into a challenge, I got to figure it out because mom's not right there to fix it for me. It's going to teach emotion regulation. I have to deal with my frustration because I have to figure it out for myself. It teaches good decision making. It teaches social skills. When I'm playing with kids my own age without a parent to referee or a grown-up to referee that interaction, I still want to keep playing. I want to have fun. So when we have conflict, we are a little bit more motivated to resolve it and have fun. I can teach kids to experience fear and manage it effectively. If we're climbing trees, I'm going to want to see how far I can climb, but I'm also not going to want to fall to my doom. So I'm learning my own limits. I'm thinking of fear as something that can be both a warning sign and fun. And we'll talk about how that really that message gets lost for a lot of kids, and that's where anxiety can come in. So I have only good things to say about independence. For example, I'm lucky enough to live close to our kids' elementary school. And technically, kids are not supposed to walk to or from by themselves, to or from our elementary school by themselves until they're in 3rd grade. And I think that that's just not going to work for us because we live so close. So this was this past fall, the first day that I said they could walk home by themselves. This was like 2 seconds after those words were out of my mouth, they were gone. So kids want to be independent. They love that opportunity. And it can be great for parents too. What do we know from the research about the relationship between independence, overprotective parenting, and mental health? I will say there is not that much conclusive research in this area. Again, it's really hard to do causal experimental designs, but we have some. Some research suggests that overparenting, however you might want to define that, is associated with worse outcomes like depression or lower life satisfaction. For some, it might be associated with substance use, lower achievement, sleep problems. But then other studies have found in like longitudinal studies, maybe very little of a relationship between overparenting and negative outcomes. And again, many of these are correlational, and you know what we say about correlation. So we may have to consider what else may be going on. Perhaps it's not that overparenting causes youth anxiety. It could be that there's other variables that cause both those things. So if I'm an anxious parent, I'm probably more likely to overparent or to be overprotective. And my child is independently more likely to be anxious or depressed because of the genetic link. And like I said, yeah, there's some studies who find little evidence of overprotection predicting later mental health concerns. So this one feels a little bit more like an open question. There's certainly benefits to independence, to having children figure things out for themselves. And there may be a link that we should continue to investigate between that type of overprotective parenting or the lack of independence and youth mental health outcomes. So given all that, I don't think that the goal of today is to identify, the one cause of the youth mental, the worsening trends of youth mental health. I would rather for us to sort of consider that likely each of these plays some role, likely many of the other potential causes that we saw in that graph before play some role. And whatever the reason, we're here now, right? And we should be thinking about things that we can do. It will take structural change to see changes in parenting practices, right, as a whole. And I don't know that we're putting that social media toothpaste back in that tube. So what can we do where we're at now to help the youth in our lives or that we care about? When we talk about social media, if you are a parent, a caregiver, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, someone in a child's life, a teacher, there are ways that you can model or set limits around social media and screen use that can be more helpful. This study shows what types of parental screen use or practices were associated with more screen time by kids, which is up higher, and less. And things like allowing people to use their smartphones in the bedroom, using smartphones during mealtime, parent modeling excessive use of social media or phones, that was also associated with more total screen time for the youth. Whereas when parents limited screen time and monitored screen time, that was associated with less use. We also know that when parents are modeling healthy use, right, just like we said, that can be beneficial, but that's not enough. One thing that these graphs show over here is that when parents are not really monitoring social media use and have a weak relationship with their kids, there tends to be worse mental health, that's this green bar, and more use, that's this blue bar. In the middle, we have low monitoring and strong relationship, or high monitoring and weak relationship. And neither of those really impacted the amount of screen time use or the mental health. What we find to have the best benefit is this combination of high monitoring and a strong relationship. High monitoring, it kind of goes in the face of what we were just talking about of overprotective parenting. We want kids to have independence, and we want to have limits around behaviors that we think are not that helpful for them, right? I also think it's a little rich to say, so you should just have a strong relationship with your teen. I'm sure everyone's rolling their eyes at me like, yeah, I would if I could. That's fair. It's very hard to have and to just overnight create some kind of warm, strong relationship with your teen. But that being said, there are some types of behaviors that you can do that will leave the door open for a teen to meet you halfway. One thing is, it's really tempting to focus on all the risks of social media and all the negative pieces of it, and to, lecture at them because maybe they don't know, maybe they didn't hear you. What can potentially be also effective is what's shown up here as creating a family media plan. Let's not just tell them what to do, but let's collaboratively set some limits. What are some limits that your team thinks are important? And can we set limits that everyone can commit to? It's not just a rule for the kids. You might have different limits for different people, but can we create these limits, and then can we post them somewhere where everyone can see and be accountable to them? Another thing that parents can do is to be curious about their teen's social media experience. Assume it's not all bad. Ask them what they really enjoy doing online. If your kid is sending you funny TikToks and you're just rolling your eyes, I get it. And as much as you can, try to reinforce that by showing interest. They are sharing with you something about themselves because they're sharing with you something that they enjoyed, and they're sharing with you some of their social media use. That's something you otherwise usually have to sneak around to get. So be curious about it, be open about it, be responsive when they do. Imagine what would happen if you asked this hypothetical teen, a teen in your life, what types of social media not only they enjoy, but makes them feel energized afterward, right? Maybe sometimes we focus too much on what feels good versus feels bad. Kind of in the moment feels relaxing to sit there and scroll forever, but you usually don't leave that feeling more energized. So if we change the way we ask that question to be learning more about what is it that makes you feel more energized, what do you feel excited, what makes you laugh when you look at social media? And then rather than discourage or only discourage the other type, what if you encourage them to use social media in that way? That would be unexpected, I think, for a lot of teens to hear their parents encouraging them to use it. But we want to assume that it's not all bad and that there are things on there that are really helpful for some teens. And you'll get a lot of brownie points, I think, if you're looking at it through that lens. Moving on to things we can do to support independence in kids. Obviously, this will look very different for every kid, but at its core, what I want to get at is it's really important to let kids make mistakes and to let them figure them out on their own. Obviously, that can't be for everything, and we want them to come to us with their problems, and we want to be there to help them. But we also want them to sometimes encounter problems that we can't solve for them and we can't fix for them right away. That's where they learn their own problem-solving skills, like I talked about before. We want to help them and support them in engaging in what we might think of as healthy, risky play. Obviously, you're going to have to find your own tolerance for that. Mine, it turns out, is lower than I would like it to be. My kids love to climb trees, and I'm always pretending not to be watching and holding my breath because I do not want them to fall from a high height. But what I try and remind myself is that when they are climbing trees, they're doing things like learning their own capacity. They are building physical muscles and that sort of emotion regulation muscle of feeling frustrated and figuring it out on their own. And all that leads to self-efficacy, a sense of confidence that's really antithetical to the mental health concerns we're talking about. a lot of the core of what I think of are important things to, ask kids to do, to encourage kids to do, are things that develop their sense of self-efficacy. Because when you feel like you can do hard things, it really undermines some of the negative self-talk that come along with things like depression or anxiety. When we support unstructured play, we're talking about having youth engage with youth, other kids their own age without an adult moderating it. It again will depend on the age, but for younger kids, this may look like making up their own game with their own rules, negotiating how to get through those rules. It can be playing with climbing on the rocks outside again. When they skin their knee, they decide, is this really worth ending the play or do I keep going? And they can have fun while they do it. Your role as a parent or a caregiver or loved one of any kind may not be to force them to go, climb a tree, but it can be to provide support. And that could be in the context of independent play, but it could be separate completely. At the core of my recommendations that I give to parents and caregivers who are worrying about a loved child is that the most important thing you can do is to validate and empathize with them. That doesn't mean, and it's a pretty important distinction, it doesn't mean taking away all of the stressors in their lives or saying, oh my gosh, you are experiencing so much anxiety, let me make it easier for you. Actually, I really recommend the opposite. But before you do anything to make their lives easier, to make it harder, or whatever, what you are doing is you're validating the feeling. You're saying, you are really struggling, or this is so hard. I'm so proud of the way you're handling this, or I'm sorry this is so difficult right now. None of that is agreeing with their behavior, but it is showing that their feelings are valid. And often that's a prerequisite, being heard as a prerequisite to being able to change our behavior. So we can encourage them to do hard things, but also acknowledge that it's really hard and not play it off like it's really easy. A big piece of this is sharing their joy, just like you might try and reinforce them for sharing their funny TikToks with you. If they are doing something that they really care about and you really don't care about, try to find some times to listen to them talk about it, to ask them about it. My son loves to make little computer games on some programming app the school gives him. And most of the time when he's working on them, I'm just trying to take a breath from my long day and read a book or breathe or whatever. And he's always asking me to play his games. And I really often want to say no. And whenever I can, I try and say yes, because I want to show that I'm interested in what brings him joy. And I will tell you, when I play these games, oh my gosh, it does bring me joy. It doesn't always have to. You should still do it even when it doesn't, but sometimes it can surprise you. As we've talked about, it's important to model healthy behaviors, to try and not just tell them what to do, but to be a model of it. And do things like prioritize free play and movement, free time, give them opportunities to engage with all these practices. I also want to just take a moment to make a plug for a couple school-based programs that I think really do focus on giving kids access to these wonderful skills. Let Grow, I think I'll have a link maybe at the end, but Let Grow is an organization dedicated to having kids have more independent time and doing it through the schools. And Trails is an organization that is about giving kids access to effective mental health skills within the schools. And so all of those things are important for all of our kids. And then for kids who are struggling with clinical levels of anxiety, depression, or other types of mental illness, we want to make sure that we help them get access to that effective mental health care. And that is actually sort of the thing I'm most passionate about in my work. I don't think that we have enough providers who are available, who take insurance, and who are trained in the most effective treatments. So when I'm not treating kids, I'm really dedicating a lot of my work and research into how can we get the workforce trained? How can we increase the size of the workforce? I'm not going to talk about that today, but I am going to really briefly talk about what are the types of effective skills, treatment skills that I might be recommending for kids with anxiety or depression. You may have heard of cognitive behavioral therapy. It is what's considered a level 1 treatment or a well-established treatment for youth anxiety and youth depression. It is truly one of the treatments with the most evidence for these two conditions. And so it is the one that I am working really hard to get more access to in the community. There are so many different skills that go in the bucket of what we might call CBT. I won't talk about them all today. Some are listed here that might be skills you would learn, or a child would learn if they were experiencing anxiety or depression. I'm just going to take a moment to talk really briefly about the last two on the slide, which are exposure, which is for anxiety, and behavioral activation, which is for depression. So first, we'll talk about behavioral activation. I think of this skill as simple but not easy. So at its core, what behavioral activation means is engaging in physically active or meaningful activities that improve mood and reduce symptoms of depression. So we do this through reversing the cycle of inactivity. So what's the cycle of inactivity? When we are inactive, when we are doing less things, fewer things that bring us joy or are physically active, then we have lower mood. Obviously, if I do fewer things that bring me joy, I will have less joy, right? But it goes the other way too. This one, we've done research both ways, and we know that when we have low mood, we are less interested in doing activities. And so we engage in less activity. And this cycle goes round and round, and it perpetuates depression. And at its core, what behavioral activation teaches kids and adults is to start doing activity before you feel ready. Don't wait to feel motivated. Don't wait till it's enjoyable. Plan it and do it now. And over time, that cycle will start to reverse. There's lots of steps for this skill, but they're somewhat intuitive. It's things like you have to identify the activities that the teen is going to do. You have to make SMART goals, which really just means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, just specific goals. You have to help them follow through. It doesn't really do a lot of good if it says on paper they're going to go for a run and then they don't. And they should track and reward progress. So again, very simple, and it can be challenging for several reasons. So I wonder if anyone here has ever made a fitness goal or an exercise plan and then not followed through exactly how they planned to. I will raise my hand. I can't see all of you, but it certainly has happened for me. Physical activity can be hard for humans on even our best days, and depression exacerbates this. Depression comes along with fatigue, lack of energy, sense of hopelessness. All of those things can make starting even a small task feel overwhelming. People experiencing depression also have negative thoughts like nothing's going to work, or it's not even worth trying, I'm just going to fail. Those can also undermine this process. So this is a tool that's really effective, and it can be really hard to get kids and teens to do reliably. A lot of time has to be taken in therapy to anticipate and troubleshoot barriers, to reward sort of attempts and trying over outcomes and what we might call success. We want to reward attempts and working together to identify those more maybe subtle barriers, things like negative self-talk, right? If behavioral activation tends to be undermined by the clinician and the patient thinking it's going to be too easy, or not too easy, but easier than it is, and so that gets in the way of really planning for it, exposure is kind of the opposite in that it tends to be undermined by clinicians and patients thinking it's going to be too hard for the patient, and so then underestimating the client's ability and not engaging in the practice. First, what is exposure? If you're not familiar with exposure therapy, it's a fancy word that means systematically choosing to face your fears. And it can look a lot of different ways. It can be, okay, I have a fear of flying. I'm going to make 10 steps. The top step is flying, and I'm going to do all these other steps first until I'm ready to take the flight. It can also look like I'm just afraid in social situations. And it makes me nervous to order in a restaurant. And it makes me nervous to raise my hand in class, to go to a party, to do a play, to do a group presentation. And so all of those things are going to be on my list of exposures. And then the exposures are actually doing the hard things. The thing about exposure is it's not an exposure unless someone feels anxious. The goal of exposure is to let yourself feel anxious, do the hard thing anyway, and learn from that experience. What do kids learn? They learn that their feared outcome doesn't usually come true. That when feared outcomes happen, usually they can cope with it better than they thought, and that they can cope with the distress of feeling anxious. When we always avoid something that makes us anxious, we start to believe that we can't do hard things, that we can't feel anxious. Any amount of anxiety is an alarm that I must get away from. And so this harkens back to what we were talking about before about the benefits of letting kids climb those trees, even if your own alarm signal is going off. It's about letting them learn that it's okay to feel some fear and do the hard thing anyway. We don't want them engaging in truly risky behavior. Again, for me, there's a limit in how high I let them go up the tree. And exposure is not about having kids do truly dangerous activities. It's about having them do activities that they avoid, that they want or need to do. And for a lot of kids, there's plenty of things that they're avoiding that they want or need to do, like going to school, or all those social activities I just described. I have a patient I'm working with, really wants to join the volleyball team. And her social anxiety is so high that it prevents her from doing that. And that's not a physically dangerous activity. So it's a wonderful skill. It's the most effective skill that we have for treating anxiety. It works really well, and clinicians are afraid to deliver it. And so again, this is the thing that I am most passionate about changing in our society, is training clinicians to do exposure well and to be confident in doing it. But I understand how it can seem so daunting. I do have a video I'm going to show you of my poor child being subjected to doing exposure with me. It is not a representation of all the types of exposures that are done. It doesn't even mean that this is like an effective exposure, but it does demonstrate a little bit about exposure, which I think is really vital. So I'll show you and then we can talk about it. Maybe. Can you look at me and tell me what you're doing? You're facing your fear to what? What's your fear? So what are you doing now? Okay. What did you do? I'm laughing because he clearly knew what language his mother wanted him to say. I'm facing my fear. The poor child of a psychologist. What I love about this video is that he feels so proud at the end. And that's the thing I want clinicians to know. I want patients to know. I want parents to know, is that exposures are the thing that more than anything in my work make people have a sense of self-efficacy, build self-confidence, build self-esteem, because there's nothing like doing something you didn't think you could do to just feel great about yourself. All right, so before I go on too long about that, just to sum up, CBT is effective for anxiety and depression. Behavioral activation is a skill for depression that works by reversing the cycle of inactivity. Exposure works by actually overcoming the cycle of avoidance, which we didn't really talk about, but it is what it sounds like. When you avoid something, you start to believe you can't do it, so you avoid it more, and that can grow and snowball. And both exposure and behavioral activation work to increase independence and self-efficacy, which are really at the core of the type of things that we've talked about today. All right. I will pass it back to Collier to see if we have time for questions right now. In the meantime, I do have a QR code with, it just has a brief survey for some feedback. If you'd like to give me feedback on my presentation, I'm always looking to improve, like Collier, like you said, like is the mission of Toastmasters. Yeah. So what do you say? Should we take questions now or pass it and move along?
Yeah, no, we have time for some questions here. We do have one, and thank you very much, Dr. Bilek. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have you found that cultural or ethnic diverse youth experience the same or different mental health effects?
It's a great question. There are differences in the rates of mental health concerns, and especially the rates in some of the specific behaviors we looked at before, like self-harm and suicide rates. There's definitely differences in race and ethnicity in our country. I don't want to say, because I'll probably get it wrong, but my memory is that Alaskan and Native American youth have some of the highest rates of that. Anyway, there are other research that shows that a lot of these trends have actually been global. So, well, maybe global is not international. We've certainly seen very similar trends in the United States, in the UK, Australia, I think the Scandinavian countries, some of them have found it too. So many of those have varieties of cultures within them, but also I know that there's many, many other cultures from different countries that are not included in that group. So I guess to say that there's definitely research to show that different groups have some different patterns, and that for youth, at least in some countries internationally, we're seeing rates go up over time.
Thank you. And I had a question. Schools are struggling with cell phone use. Some are taking the policy, you put it in this box and you'll get it after school. What would you share with a school administration as far as phone use and how to, what monitoring and whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. The research is very new about cell phone bans in schools. I think last I looked, there was something like a meta-analysis or a review that had 5 studies in it, and they often find very different things. So some studies find that if you have a cell phone ban, it improves social interactions and social skills outcomes for kids, but doesn't improve academic outcomes. Some find no benefit to it. In many ways, I think it's too soon to know. I personally think that if you had to ask me personally, I think there's probably a benefit to it. And I would really like to see some more research done on exactly how to do it, because one article I read shared that it can be extremely challenging when a school decides to do a cell phone ban, but just asks the teachers to each individually, enforce it. And it's almost unenforceable, and can cause more challenges between the teachers and the children. So I think I'd like to see a lot more research done to show whether it works and on what variables and really how to implement it. But my gut says that there's probably a benefit to having hours in the day where they don't have access to their cell phones.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bilek. Mm-hmm. And now we will move on to resiliency with Nagham Alsamari. Coach Nagham, as I mentioned, is an international speaker, certified resilience coach, and DISC consultant. With a background as a teacher and principal, she helps individuals and organizations build resilience, manage stress, and lead with intention. Please welcome Coach Nagham.
Thank you, Collier, and thank you, Dr. Bilek, for this. This was very enlightening, and I got to tell you, I found a lot of similarities in some of the things you mentioned about your own children. My work is mainly with adults, but my background and my expertise has been in education for, in my past life as a teacher and school principal, and I've worked extensively with educators themselves, training them on, working with students, and listening, and watching Dr. Bilek's presentation too. I can see a lot of the things that she was actually mentioning, and some of the things I'll be mentioning too, or in my presentations, or similar. And thank you, Collier and Rotary and Toastmasters for this joint webinar and much needed webinar, because I think we can all benefit from this. And one thing I want to start with on this wonderful sunny day is I have 2 adult children, and I'm a grandmother as well. And at least one of my children gave me a card that says something like, I don't remember, it's been a while, something like a good mother points you in the right direction and a great mother steps aside to let you walk it. So this is, you know, I'll take it's actually hanging up in my living room as proof that I'm not a helicopter mother. Again, at least one child. The other child, God knows what he thinks. So today, 2 things we're going to talk about, and but before we do that, I would love for our audiences who are listening and watching to us to do an audio check for me. I want to make sure everybody can hear, everybody can watch us, and drop the number 1 right in the comment section so I can make sure that, you know, everything is functional and everything works. So today we're talking about burnout. Now, I know it says burnout proof. I don't know that we can actually proof burnout, but we can only work on that. We can only take steps towards that. So these are the things that we're going to talk about. How to spot early signs of burnout in youth, how to set boundaries that stick, or to get started on that. How to rebuild energy and leave with 1 actionable step before you leave today. And I'll be asking you, thank you so much for participating and dropping on. I'll be asking you a lot of questions that I want you to actually drop in the comments. And the first one is this: what pressures do you see most often in your youth? And these are just some of the things that in my experience I have seen, and there's a lot more. And Dr. Bilek, you know, she mentioned a whole bunch of as well. Academic overload, social media is one of the things that, you know, is out there. Are they getting close to that career planning, college planning, where they're, you know, getting really pressured to start thinking about in that direction? Is it sleep deprivation? Is it social pressures around them? And this list is not exhaustive, and 2, it's there is a lot more that's missing from this list, and it can really be at any age and not necessarily just the teen age or the, you know, the young adult age. Okay, so first of all, a lot of times we see something and we immediately jump to, is it, oh, my child is burnout, or I'm burnt out, you know? And again, I'd like for you to also see yourself in these shoes as well as we're talking. We have to distinguish: is it stress or is it burnout? Stress is normal. We all feel it, you know, in our points of our time. We feel pressures of, you know, life, of things that just happen to us. When it takes on a different form, when it becomes the norm in your life, that moves into the window of burnout. So let's take a look. That's not what I wanted it to do. Oh, just give me a second. Let's do this. My screen doesn't want to move. So here we go. Let's do it this way. If I present, it doesn't want to move the window. All right. So stress it's temporary, because we all experience. I'm going through some overload in my you know, in my work. I have a lot of homework to deal with. I've got a lot of social pressures. I can't make the sports team in my, you know, in my school. This causes stress, and that is a temporary thing, and it goes away after you have found a solution, or after you have done an activity, after you have gone out of your Dr. Bilek refers to it as I forgot the term, doing the activity. I call it get out of your comfort zone, get out of what you're used to doing and do something different. Whereas burnout is chronic and persistent, and it's recurring on a daily basis and a longer periods of time. In stress, motivation is there. If you're stressed out, you're still motivated. You still want to do things. Whereas if you're burnt out, your motivation is gone and you don't want to step up and do the thing because you feel like, oh, it's not gonna work. You're not gonna be able to help yourself doing that. Energy bounces back as well. Again, when you're stressed, you feel a little bit of lack of energy, but it bounces back as soon as you rest. It bounces back as soon as you do something different and step out of that field that you're in. With burnout, it's constant fatigue. It's constant drainage of energy. And that's when you can tell, oh, this is not just normal stress. It's getting into that burnout stage. And finally, if I'm feeling overwhelmed for a short period of time, it's only because it's the overwhelm of the work. It's the overwhelm of the social pressures. It's the overwhelm of whatever I'm going through. But if I'm in long-term withdrawals, I don't want to talk to my friends anymore. I don't feel like, talking about my problems is going to support me, or maybe skipping on schoolwork. There's a lot of different ways, and it's consistent and it's for a long period of time. That's when, that is a sign of burnout. And this is when, we need to pay extra attention, because we really need to pay attention all the time. All right, let me go back to presenting. Let's see how that works. No? Okay, let's do this one more time. Okay, so which one of these do you first of all, do you see your child or the person you're taking care of, or maybe it's a child in your family vicinity that's going through any one of these things? Okay, what I want to do is I'm going to read you 4 scenarios, and in each scenario I want you to see if you can figure out, is it stress? Is it a short-term effect? It's going to go away, part of life, or is it burnout that we need to take action for? And when I read the scenario, what I'd like for you to do is, in the comment or the chat, I want you to write the word stress or burnout, whatever you think it is. Okay. The first one is, and I understand that audio may be lagging, and that's normal. All right. Scenario 1. Your 15-year-old is studying for finals and feeling anxious. They're snappy at dinner, spend hours reviewing notes, and say, if I don't pass, I'm a failure. They still finish their work and go to bed on time. What do you think? I want you to write down in the comments, either is it stress or is it burnout? Drop one of these words. And this is not a test, I promise. I know I'm a former teacher and principal, but this is not a test. All right. Good. Okay, next one is, your 16-year-old used to love soccer, but suddenly skips practice, avoids friends, and says, I just don't care anymore. They're sleeping more, missing assignments, and brushing you off when you check in. Is that stress or burnout? What do you think? For scenario 2. Okay. Scenario 3, your 13-year-old has a packed schedule. School, piano, tutoring, but they seem energized. They talk excitedly about their day and make time for family dinner. They collapse into bed exhausted, but say it was a good day. Is that stress or burnout? What do we think? All right, you guys are getting the assignment. All right, finally, last scenario. Your 17-year-old spends all their time in the room, stops texting friends, and their grades are slipping. When you ask what's wrong, they say, I'm just tired, but don't want to talk or engage in anything. What are your thoughts on this last one? Is that stress or burnout? So I think you get the idea. Yeah, you get the idea that when it is a long-term effect, when there is a lot of withdrawal, it goes into the burnout stage versus just being stressed out, which can be relieved by taking rest, recharging. Thank you guys for participating. You're a great audience. Okay. So here are some things to watch out for. And we're going to talk about emotional, physical, and behavioral signs. And these are things, in my work, I've seen even in adults, not just in children. So for emotional signs, you're looking at irritability. They're easily irritated. Now, let's just be honest. How many of you know a teenager who's not easily irritated? So we can't just say if your teenager is easily irritated, they're burnt out. That's a sign. That's just one of the signs. And again, you're watching out for consistent. Are they consistently this way? And are there other signs along with it? So it's not just irritability on its own. Apathy is a big one. If they're indifferent to a lot of different things, activities, things you do, again, it's also, very popular among teens to be feeling this way anyway, because they want to seem cool for not caring or anything like that. I mean, I had both a girl and a boy, and I saw a huge difference in between the two of them raising them. And my son was also similar to Dr. Bilek's, where he actually was putting together computers when he was younger, and he created video games, and he wanted me to engage with him. I'm the tech person too, so it was easy conversation for us. Whereas my daughter was the, she was the imaginary, dreamy, and she turned out to be an artist, and her father is. So, and it was it was a great combination. Not everyone is lucky, but it's a hit or miss sometimes in the conversation, right? And but as long as the conversation keeps going, right? Mood swings is another one, and it's also normal to have in teenagers because of the hormone levels, and they're always fluctuating. But this is one of the things, again, if you're seeing on a consistent level, coupled with other things like constant fatigue, constant sleep changes. They're not always sleeping at the right amount of time, or they're missing sleep, or they're sleeping too much. If they have unexplained headaches, I mean, some headaches come with physical, explanations. There's some reasons for them, but if they're unexplained headaches, constantly complaining, and then their behavior, isolation. I've also went through a huge period of time of both my children of being isolated, but that was a period of time, and it was they were able to explain and verbally tell me what was going on with them, which was, I was able to understand and help. And at times I couldn't help. I just gave them their peace. Sometimes they need that. But if it is a long periods of isolation where they don't want to talk, they cannot explain why they want to isolate. They have a lack of motivation, and their performance isn't doing well. All of these coupled together can be signs of burnout. Okay. Oh, there we go. Same issue. Let's see if I can do this without. Oh, maybe it did. No. Okay, let's do this one more time here. Okay, so let me just remove this. The three common struggles that we see, and I want you to be honest with me on this one. Once you see the screen, I want you to be honest with me and tell me which one of these have you used in the past with your child, with your teen, and I'll be honest with you up front, and I have pretty much used all of them in the past. I'm guilty of all of them. These are common struggles, and these are phrases we have said in the past because I said so. Is that a reason for saying something, for giving a reason for a child? Because I said so. We use controlling language when we talk to our children because we think we know better. We have this life experience that is worth something, right? So we thank you for being honest, Anne, and putting in the comments. Blame, shaming tone sometimes because we want not to belittle our children, but to help them understand that this is what other people could see them as or make them feel as. And so we have used this in the past, and unfortunately, it's not the best way to work with our children who are going through so much change. So instead, oh my God, okay, I'm learning a lesson here with you guys, and that is when presenting on StreamYard, especially StreamYard, it does not allow you to actually move objects. So do not add objects in your next presentation. Okay, so instead of using this type of language, let's go through some challenges. Maybe too much phone use, one of the things Dr. Bilek talked about. Instead of get off your phone, the number one thing I would honestly suggest that I have, seen work for me as an educator, as somebody who trains educators and someone who's worked with adults and for my own children is modeling. And that is, if you want to see a certain, time for phone use, you do that first before you preach to your child about when is it appropriate to use the phone or not. You do that. One of the things we did when our children were younger, my husband and I, is we read a lot, Arabic, English, and that's exactly what our children did. And they, turned out to be good readers, I would say, in both languages. So one of the things you could try is, you've been tired lately. Want to try to wind down together? That's the key word here, together. You're doing things together as opposed to just having or giving an order to your child. Another thing is if they're overscheduled and tired, instead of saying you're doing too much, aren't we all doing too much? Let's be honest, we're all doing too much. So instead, give a choice, because we want to encourage that autonomy. We want to encourage our children to actually take steps towards their own success and be responsible. So which activity feels most important to you right now? That's something that you can ask instead. And as I'm saying this, I want you to tell me in the comments which one of these has worked best for you. And then the last one is, if let's say your child is ignoring responsibilities, how many of us have said you're being lazy? You're not doing your chores. You're not doing what you're supposed to, right? All of these, I remember them clearly because I said them before. Something you could say is that I notice you're not doing this and this. I see that you have low energy. What can we do to help you with that? What can we adjust? And and be a parent. Talk to your child as a parent, not as an educator, not as a doctor. Have that social interaction, really. Okay, so let's talk about some energy boosting habits that you can do. And I want you to also think and tell me which one feels easiest to try this week. And really, I want to know this week, because we're all about getting up and doing things together, right? So I want to encourage you to actually pick up some of these habits. All right, so here's something you can try. Tech-free wind down. There are benefits, of course, and as well as some harmful effects from too much tech, right? We all know what these are, some of us more than others, but we don't want to completely no tech, but at least a tech-free wind down. So as an example, turning off screens, but doing it together for at least 30 minutes before bedtime. And it's not just children must do that. It's all of us together doing this as an activity, as a family. Why this helps? Because it really, when you're doing the phone and the scrolling, and it really could affect your sleep routine. And this is not just for children, it's also for all of us adults as well. So it's a really great activity to do together with your child. Here's another one. A brain break. How many of you have heard your teachers talk about this in the classroom? They give brain breaks to their students. So a brain break is a short mental break between different things your child is doing, between homework, between chores, studying, or whatever it is they're doing. Basically, they just get up and do something different. They focus on something completely different for 10 minutes. what it does, it re-energizes them. It brings back productivity. And again, trust me, these things also work for adults, not just children. Another one is the movement challenge. It's exactly what it is, what it sounds like. Do a 2 to 5 minute stretch or walk. And if the sun is out, that's the best time to walk, because you get a lot of energy from the sun. You get refreshed coming back. And try to do it together if you can. And the next one is gratitude check-ins. This really helps with just kind of reflecting on what are we thankful for? Because there's a lot of things in our life that we always whine about. But what are we thankful for? What are we gracious for? We have a lot of things in our life that we can just take time to reflect, and it's only a couple of minutes that we think about. We don't have to write down stuff and make a huge list. It's just thinking about that. And then finally, a joyful activity swap, and that is replacing a draining or unproductive habit, whatever it is. Let's say they're playing on their, PlayStation for far too long. There is playtime and there is other time. But if it's really long time that is draining them, swap that with something else they still like. Maybe listen to music or talk with a friend, but that, so that they're not completely taken away from what they like. And they're also engaging in something they also appreciate doing and usually do at the same time. So which one of these are you going to do this week? That's your challenge, by the way. Can I track if you actually did it? No, absolutely not. I can't do that. But I would love to encourage you to try one of these things this week, or if another activity that you can do with your child. That would be great. All right. And here is something I would love to learn from you. And what I want you to do is take your phone and scan this QR code, and tell me, it's one question that I want you to answer. And what you could do is do that, and you can actually select all the answers that apply to you. What is one thing you wish you felt easier as a parent or caregiver right now? What is that one thing? And then go ahead and scan the QR code and write and select one of these answers. What I'm going to do is, welcome, Collier, you're back. What I'm going to do is we're going to talk about a resilience blueprint that you can try with your child in a few minutes. But I would love to learn about what you're doing, and which one of these things is easier for you as a caregiver right now. Now, a lot of us have struggled with either being over controlling or not controlling enough. And I'll be honest with you, the environment I was raised in, I was born in Iraq, and I came to the United States. I was 13 years old, and I came here as a refugee. And I've actually lived in 3 different countries. So in Iraq, where I was born, up to 8 years old, and then I lived in the desert camp in Saudi Arabia for 4 years. And that was my teenage years, kind of starting out, my preteen years, I guess, and then coming to the United States, going directly into high school, and having to learn the language, the culture, and getting this culture shock. I felt like I grew up really quickly. I did not have a chance to experience childhood for myself, because there was war before the desert camp, and then there's the desert camp, which my childhood did not exist. I was forced to wear, cover all the way up, cover my face. I couldn't see anything because of the culture in Saudi Arabia, and that's how you had to dress up because you lived there. And then coming to the United States, where, okay, there was freedom, but I had to learn about everything and everybody, and kids had to learn about me because they had no idea who I was, where I came from. And so for me, I had to do a lot of self-building. I had to do a lot of self-discovery. I had to learn about my own abilities, learn about my, own, what exactly do I do from here? I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a teacher, but there's so many things to tackle. So one of the things that as soon as I got married, my husband and I talked about is how we're going to raise our children so they have an understanding of their own heritage and culture, but also be able to live in the country they're born in and are citizens of, and be able to speak both languages and be able to be responsible. One of the big things that we talked about. Now, were we hovering helicopters? Yes, I'll be honest and tell you 100%. We were working on trying to give them responsibility. We were working on that. It was always a work in progress. And as the two adult children now tell you, we were very much in control, probably. But it's a learning in progress all the time, constantly. But your childhood really, it's how you work with your children decides how they're going to come out, but also their environment. The environment they live in, who's surrounding them. There's a lot of different factors. But anyway, I just wanted to share that a little bit. And the other thing so I'm going to share, and it's not coming. I'm going to share your resilient blueprint in a minute. And I really wanted to get your feedback, your input on the presentation so far. And while you do this, I want to take a look at the poll results. And so far, those of you who have taken the poll, thank you so much for doing this. Ooh, I see some of you have selected understanding my youth stress, helping them find balance. Some of you have selected more than one. Building better communication, managing my own overwhelm. Ooh, that's a big one. A lot of times we may be thinking that if I'm stressed out, my child is probably stressed out, but it's not the same amount of stress. It's not the same kind of stress, I should say, because our children go through different things. They experience different things in their life than we do. But one of the main things that I have seen in my experience is being present. And the other one, that's a really big one, and it's really hard to do, is being patient. When you are present, you can do things together. I think Dr. Bilek talked about this a little bit with, your child is doing something while you're doing something. It's a scheduled event, maybe not. It's just a nonchalant activity that you can do together, or while your child is doing the fun activity, you're doing your fun activity. But sharing in the moment, where most of the time we're so busy that if a child is sharing something with us, yes, we're so proud. The homework sheet is on the refrigerator. The picture is on the refrigerator, but do we take time to talk about it? Do we take time to see what they're proud of? The questions we ask is, well, how was your day? What's the answer that we usually get? Fine. Good. What happened today? Nothing. All right. How many times have you heard that before? Let's change those questions around. Let's change those questions around. Instead, start with you sharing what happened with your day. Let's turn it around. Let's turn the tables. This is what happened with me today. Now, I used to be a talker, and you can probably tell. I come home, I go to the kitchen, I find my mom, I start talking. I tell her everything that happened. Not every child is like that. So if your child isn't the kind that wants to tell you what happened or thinks there is much going on, then you start. Ask them. Excuse me, not ask them. You start. Okay, today I worked on da-da-da-da. Today I did this. Even if it's insignificant to you, start with you opening the conversation by sharing something and make that a regular thing. And listen as they're talking. I think most of the time we don't listen. We listen to other adults in the room because they come first. And then we wait until the adult is done to actually hear the child out. that's something that needs to be turned around. We have to give priority to children, and we have to remind ourselves to do this all the time. Alrighty, so here's the blueprint, which I also have a copy. This could be downloaded, and not just this graphic that you're looking at. Actually, a worksheet that comes with all of these questions and some reflections that you can actually do with your child. So the first thing is notice without judgment. Your child is withdrawn, or your child is having a rough time. They're not talking as much as they do, as they usually do, or maybe they are on their PlayStation for very, very long time. One of the things we always jump to is judging, controlling language, and you've been on too long. It's time to stop, get off, get away. Or some people go to the extreme of taking the PlayStation away, right? So let's start with something small and simple. Let's start by noticing that. We need to first understand where this is coming from. We need to also see, is this a recurring behavior? Is this something that's happening all the time? We need to pay attention to these subtle changes in moods and in energies first before we jump into action without actually understanding, because there is a why behind the why. If somebody tells you they're going through something and you ask why, and they give you a reason, ask another why, and they give you another reason, ask another why, and they say 5 whys really help you get to the bottom of things, if that. So notice the behavior first so that you can have a better understanding of what's going on. 2, create a safe moment to connect. We always, okay, and this one, be honest with me. And I want you to throw a number 2 in the comment if this is you. And I'll be the first to admit, we lecture. We tend to lecture. How many of you do that? If you ever have lectured your child, throw a number 2 in the comments. I have done that. I am guilty of that. My children are now adults, and sometimes they still do that. Instead of lecturing, let's reframe the phrases that we use. I notice you've been on your PlayStation longer times than usual lately. I notice you've been not talking a lot to us during dinner time lately. I notice you've been, and whatever the situation is, yes, thank you, Joan, give unwanted advice. We do this all the time. Again, we think we're the adults. We know better. We've got the life experience. So we do that. We give unwanted advice. So instead, how about we let curiosity play a role? Instead of lecturing, ask questions. Figure out what's going on. Be the what is it called? The fly on the wall to observe, to look at what's going on, and then also be curious. Ask questions as opposed to immediately jumping to conclusion and lecturing and start giving unwanted advice, just like Joan mentioned. Number 3, co-set a micro boundary. And I say because we always, again, as the know-it-all parents and adults in the family, what we tend to do is we set boundaries for our children, but we forget that we need these boundaries as well. We forget that we need to model. We need to lead by example. If we're modeling, if we're telling our children to read a lot and we're on the phone or we're on TV or, we're not reading as much, they're not going to watch somebody on TV read and learn from them. They're going to watch you. They're watching you most of their time, right? They're watching you. They're watching their teachers, their friends, the people they're exposed to the most. And so we want to co-set a micro boundary. And what that looks like is that you work on it together. What does that boundary look like? You come up with your, and I don't like to call them rules. I really don't. I like the word expectations, because then you work on them together. They're expected of both of you rather than just one person. For example, one small thing could be the 30-minute tech-free bedtime that we talked about earlier, or the the 10-minute daily walk, or maybe that what time is homework time, or maybe what time is phone time or social media time. But set it and decide it together rather than you setting the expectation yourself and you enforcing. Don't enforce, do it together. Then it's enforcement is already there. It's already implied. Okay, number 4. And then what I want to ask you before I move on to number 4 is which one of these is it number 1, or let's actually call it by name because I don't have the numbers on the screen. Is it notice without judgment? Is it create a safe moment to connect, or set a micro boundary that you have done? I would love to know if you've tried one of these 3 before. So just throw in the comments a number 1, 2, or 3. Notice without judgment is number 1. Create a safe moment to connect is number 2. Or co-set a micro boundary, number 3. If you've tried one of these, please let us know, because it's important that we all learn from each other, and we all experience in the victories, because these are victories that we do for each other. And number 4, rebuild with energy habits. So, okay, we've noticed there's something going on. We're now working towards, forgetting, we're not doing lectures, we're working together, we're modeling the behavior, we're setting our boundaries and expectations together. Now we want to rebuild that energy, because a lot of times our children don't know where their energy's gone because they don't know how to set their time. They don't have that experience. They spend more time on certain things versus another. Maybe they don't appreciate playing outside as we did as younger children. They don't know the benefits of playing outside. The lack of vitamin D is one of the biggest problems now that a lot of doctors call out because we were not exposed to the sun as much. So how do you rebuild with energy habits? Going back to the brain breaks, the walks, the movement birds, maybe playing music together that you both like, and dancing to that. Just recharging with some things that you both enjoy. Doing chores together versus your child is supposed to do this, you're doing that, and you're doing things separately. Doing them together is, it gives you a burst of energy to both of you. And Joan is saying, try to all of these takes practice and own self-healing understanding. 100% takes practice. It is not something that you, it's not a magic wand that you just, just point and things are going to go. No, it takes practice. It takes a lot of self-discipline, I should say, as well, because it's first, you have to get into these habits yourself. You have to unlearn a lot of things that we have probably learned from our parents or grandparents, our own environment, our school system, of how we're all, treated. And then begin to, try some of these practices. And then finally, reflect and repeat. Take a look back. And this is something I'd like to do together too with a child. Again, one or multiple children. Reflection isn't just something you do on your own. It's look back at your whole entire week. How did it go? What worked? What activity did you enjoy the most? Notice what they're talking about the most. What are they sharing the most with their friends, maybe, or even on social media? Are you friends with them on social media? I know a lot of teens may not like that because, ew, mom and dad, or ew, an adult relative. But some of them may welcome that you're friends with them, and that you not to track their behavior, but to be part of their life, to be part of their activities that you may not be privy to. So reflect together, look back at your week and look at the activities you've done together, and look at, what has worked? What can we do again? What can we try? What's something we should avoid? because we don't do that. We think everything works and we just keep trying. The other thing too is when you try something, let's say, you know, you do the micro energy bursts, and you try something, and you say, okay, that didn't work. Your child didn't enjoy it, and you just leave it alone. The problem with that is we have to give something enough time to see if it works or not, at least a couple of weeks for something to see if it actually works. If we're having a conversation with ourselves, when you're having a conversation with your teen, and basically you're just the one talking and you don't see a response and you just drop that because, well, it's not working. My question is, how many times did you try that? How long did you try that for? And what are you saying? Words are really important. Are you being the adult just trying to pry in your child's life? Or are you just genuinely engaging in conversation about their day and then sharing something about you so that it's a back and forth conversation versus just you talking? So it's frustrating, folks. I know. I have been there multiple times, more than you can think, because it's not just my own children that I've been through this conversation with. It's everyone I have taught in my past, everyone I have been a principal with, you know, at their school. I've had this conversation with them or with their parents, and we want to be consistent with that. We want to try again. We don't want to give up too quickly. And it's gonna get somewhere. Sometimes you get a couple of words in, you know, you get some words responses back. Sometimes you get nothing, but you want to be consistent, because you cannot try something for a little bit and say it didn't work and just completely drop it. We have to be consistent. For anything to work, you have to try it for you know, a good period of time. So you have been really brave today in sharing some of your experiences in the comments and some of the answers that I've asked you, and you know, just sharing some in the polls what you have done in the past. It's amazing. So if I leave you with anything, this is what I'd like to leave you with. Start small and stay consistent. We don't want to jump into something too big, get too excited. I want to try this, and then it doesn't work and you just leave it. Start with something teeny tiny, but stay consistent with it for a period of time before you give up on it and say, I can't use this strategy. It didn't work. Your presence is important. And by presence, I don't mean just your physical body being in there in the room with, you know, your teen, your child, your youth. I mean engagement. I mean modeling. I mean leading by example, trying to interact. My son used to, when he was a child and he was doing, you know, playing these different games, he used to want me to join every game. And so, you know, sometimes I joined and play, and sometimes I didn't, because I didn't find interest in the game. He used to compete with me on technologies. And I'll tell you, I used to win. I used to know a lot more than he did. But then he got to an age where I'm like, oh, this is too fast for me. I can't compete anymore. But find that thing that you can communicate with your child on. And sometimes you just have to force yourself to do that. We force ourselves to do a lot of things. We make New Year's resolutions, and we force ourselves to do, you know, things we don't like, exercise. We force ourselves to go to work, people, every single day. We talk to people we don't want to. We communicate with people we don't want to. Let's do the easy thing and talk to our children and be present in their moments. And then spot the signs. Look for those signs. Remember, you can get stressed if you're overwhelmed, if you have a lot of pressure going on in your life. But the more these signs prevail, if they stay there for a long period of time, you have to spot those and see, okay, are they turning into burnout? Is it something that I need to take action on? Do I need to see a specialist? Do I need to talk to a therapist on, you know, on this? So notice these behavior changes, these physical changes in your child, and spot those signs, and don't jump into judgment. Observe first to see Is it something that's just going to go away because they're, they have a lot of homework and a lot of projects? It's the end of the year. Oh, what's going on? Or is it something that is consistent, that is ongoing, that's changing even in their sleep patterns, and maybe they're, they have sudden headaches that you can't really explain. So spot those signs and then pick one thing to work on. We get overwhelmed with everything that we have to do, and instead of trying to do everything all at once, select one thing to work on. Make that your goal. And I think Dr. Bilek also alluded to that in the SMART goals. One thing that you can measure, that you can actually do, it's doable, and make sure it's relevant to what you're doing. So pick one thing, one small action that you can actually do. If you have any, if you have any concerns with, oh, this is too much, then again, look at what is the most important, maybe even the most urgent, these two things. If it has those two things in it, important and urgent, that's the one you should do. Which one of these feels the easiest to try this week? Drop them in the chat for me. Start small, presence, spot the signs, or pick one action. Which one of these four feels the easiest for you to try this week? And I don't mean next month, or one day. We don't want one day timelines. We want to start now. So which one feels easiest? And I would love to take any questions, either for me or for Dr. Bilek, or for Collier as well. What questions can I answer? If you would like to connect with me, here are all my social media, my email address, and my website. And I will actually be emailing you the blueprint PDF, so that you can have that as well, and you could use it. You could use it for you as well, if you don't have a child in your life, because it's a lot of the things that we talk about also apply for adults. Collier, back to you.
Yeah, Coach Nagham, appropriately, Coach. And I don't know if you can answer this, but looking back when you were a teacher and a principal, were there students, or one student as an example, that really had difficulty with resiliency, and then maybe you saw them as an adult later on that really was able to be very resilient and very successful? Does anything come to mind? Anything you could share?
Wow. It's funny. I had an event for the University of Michigan last week, I think last Thursday. And one of the students, one of the alumni students of the U of M that was standing with me, sharing in her glory, was my student back in the day. And she is not that she had problems with resilience, but she did, when she was a student of mine, she did have attention deficit disorder, or she still does. But that was one of the things that she had actually, suffered from as a student. She had a lot of a problem focusing and knowing what she wanted to do. And meeting her again as an adult was a blessing, because she had become a teacher herself. She had also become a principal herself. And she has left the principal position and was going to open up her own business and going to earn her doctorate degree back at the University of Michigan, which is just amazing to see. And in terms of, honestly, it's really hard to kind of think of, because I had so many, during my years, I've had so many different students that I have experienced working with. And there's mostly, with children, it shows up as something different. It shows up as inattention. It shows up as, some people label it as misbehavior. And we, one of the things that I work with teachers on is that we need to understand the reason for the misbehavior. We need to understand the cause. What is the child trying to tell us from that? Why are they trying to get our attention in a negative way? So I didn't really see it as not having resilience, because resilience kind of takes a bit to develop. Most likely when you start at the it's your young adult age and up, with children, it's something else. It's, you know, it looks like something else, but it's really hard to think of a specific example, Collier, because it's, you know, hundreds of students in my experience that I've seen and worked with.
Well, let me share with everyone, and if anyone's got a question, we're monitoring the chat. But I want to share. This past weekend, I was with our Rotary youth leadership with 100 high school students from southeastern Michigan and southwest Ontario, Canada, and what a delight it was to see all of them. And they had to come up with a project that they were going to take back to their school or their community. And there are 6 areas that they could focus in on. And the group that I was a mentor, they started out with one project, then they went to another one, and then I went back and they had this third one. Well, they decided on mental health, and I asked them how they picked that, and they said because it's becoming more and more prevalent. And what was interesting about the whole process, watching them, and Dr. Bilek, this kind of piggybacks on what you said earlier, is the fact you just let them go. They figure it out, and it's like complete chaos and confusion at the beginning. And then they slowly start jumping. And then they have like specific activities, you know, what everyone feels really comfortable and really good at. They start writing notes on what they're going to do. And then it comes all together at a presentation where parents are coming in on Sunday and other Rotarians. It was, I got goosebumps. It was just so cool to see where there's mass confusion and chaos up into this professional that they did. So really cool. All right. I have to tell you, I've been in the youth mental health probably 8 to 10 years. Both of your presentations are 2 of the best I've seen and experienced. So I want to thank you both for that. In fact, it's so good, I would hear them both again. And I can, because we've got that on YouTube, and I'll share that with everyone as well. And I know that there's some people that couldn't make it that want to see it too. So I will share that with them. And if I'm not, a lot of thank yous. I guess this will conclude our youth mental health and awareness. I want to thank both Dr. Emily Bilek from the University of Michigan Depression Center and Coach Nagham Alsamari, who it's the IMCAN. Am I pronouncing that right? IMCAN.
IMCAN, and it means possibility in Arabic. That's what it means.
I read that. I looked that up actually. So thank you all, and have a good evening and a great rest of the week.